was part Cherokee. He had black hair and brown eyes, and I said, I'm going to find my roots in American Indian religion, and I'm going to go up in the mountains, and God is the Great Spirit, and I'm going to find God through the things He's made.
So now you're in California, headed up to the cave.
And I found a very remote cave way up in these desert mountains. I decided that I wanted to be as natural as I could be, and this is back in the early 70s. I took off all my clothes.
You really did live there naked?
Yeah. Well, when I went to Palm Springs, I put my clothes back on. Once I forgot. I don't have time for that story. But I didn't wear clothes, and it was warm most of the time. This is the desert mountains. And I would hike down to town and beg for food and panhandle, do odd jobs, dig in the dumpster outside the market. I panhandled Sonny Bono when I was living down there.
You dug in a dumpster to get food?
Yep.
A multi-millionaire's son?
Too stubborn to call home.
I'm going to find out more about this cave in a moment. Doug and I'll be right back.
Now it's time for the Environmental Corner with David Smith. This week, the problem with six-pack rings.
Believe it or not, six-pack rings are killing birds and marine life. Take pelicans, for example. They dive into the water to catch fish. If they happen to dive through one of these rings floating in the water, it might make the pelican unable to open its mouth, causing it to starve to death. What a way to go. Underwater, these rings are almost invisible. Sea creatures like young seals have been known to get their necks caught in the rings. The bigger they grow, the tighter the rings get, causing the animal to suffocate. Six-pack rings get into the ocean by people carelessly leaving them on the beach, the tide taking them away. The rings, not the people, unfortunately. In Texas, on a 300-mile stretch of shoreline, 15,600 of these babies were gathered up in 3 hours. Must have been some party. And these are regularly dumped into waterways with other garbage, eventually ending up in the ocean. In seaside landfills, they're eroded or blown by wind into the water. Now, what can we do? Well, really, there ought to be better ways to package soft drinks than these plastic rings. But until that's done, here's something else we can do. Before you throw these things away, just cut each circle with scissors, like this. Snip, snip. Watch your fingers. Don't cut outside the lines. See, this is easy. I'm David Smith in the Environmental Corner. Now, if you're really in a hurry, this'll do it.
Information in the Environmental Corner is taken from 50 simple things you can do to save the Earth from the Earthworks Group.
Doug, this multi-millionaire father, did he ever find out you were digging for food in a dumpster?
Yes, he did, Don. And my grandparents lived in Desert Hot Springs, not very far away. And from time to time, I would hitchhike over there and ask if I could do my laundry at Grandma's house. And when they found out that I was digging in the dumpster and worse to get my food, back then they called it on the street. I hung out with a lot of street people when I'd come to town. They called it dumpster diving. Sometimes for food we did something called dine and dash, which is where you eat in a restaurant and then run out before paying. And when you're hungry, you get desperate. But when my father found out that I was doing that, I think it really broke his heart, because he remembered growing up with 3 younger brothers. His mother was widowed, no father, during the Depression, and really struggling to have food. And here he had become this multimillionaire, successful businessman. He could offer me anything I wanted in the way of education and opportunity. And it really was mystifying to him, and it really hurt him. And I can't help but think sometimes what our Father in heaven thinks when he's paid so much that we might have everlasting treasure. And instead of going to him, we go to the dumpster of the world to find our happiness. But the miracle I didn't share yet, obviously people know I'm a Christian now, and is I was up in the mountains, and when I first moved into the cave, it was a beautiful spot way up in the mountains outside of Palm Springs, a canyon called Tuckwitz Canyon. And right now, you can't get up there. They fenced it since then, and it's guarded. And I did go back last year, courtesy of National Geographic. It was a real thrill. About 1 year ago, they flew me up in a helicopter.
Wow.
For a brief segment that they take. And so I got to go look at the old haunts up there, but I had a cave right by a waterfall and a pool in a desert mountain stream.
And that's where you live.
I lived there for a year and a half, and the miracle is when I first went up there was a Bible up on a rock ledge in this cave, and I thought, well, that's unusual. I mean, it wasn't that odd because people had camped there before. There was smoke on the ceiling, and I thought, well, someone left a Bible. Funny footnote is someone asked me one time, was it a Gideon Bible? Did the Gideons put it there? You know, because the Gideons put them in all the hotel rooms, and they thought, well, now maybe they're leaving them in all the caves everywhere. But it was just a King James Bible, and after 6 months, I decided I wanted to read it, not because I intended to believe it, but back then they had a version of Christians that were called Jesus freaks, and that was sort of when a hippie became converted to Christianity, and they maybe weren't completely recovered from their drugs, and they were just really outspoken Christians, and they'd get in your face and say, are you saved? Do you know Jesus? And I would get into these discussions. I'd argue with these Christians, and I felt ignorant because I knew nothing about the Bible. And I thought, well, at least I should know the Jewish part of the Bible, the Old Testament.
Oh, so you started reading.
So I decided I'm going to go start reading the Bible, so at least I can argue with them and seem intelligent. And while I did not have much formal education, I still did not have a high school diploma, I was a good reader at this point because I'd done a lot of reading up there. And so I started reading, but I did get bogged down in numbers, I think. It seemed a little tedious to me. One of my Christian friends said, you need to jump now to the New Testament. So I did, and I read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And what I failed to say is that in the cover of the Bible that was up there, someone had written a prayer. And I never thought much of it at the time. And it said, I hope whoever finds this Bible finds the same peace and happiness I found. And it was someone's name, I don't remember. It said born again on a date, and I don't remember that. I just didn't pay much attention to it. And after reading through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I was very troubled because my mind was telling me, and my training was telling me, this is a collection of fables and legends. As I read it, I was being impressed, this is the truth. I thought, it can't be true. How could all this be true? I believed in evolution. Noah and the ark and Adam and Eve. I said, it's fables. But I could not escape the conviction it was true. And especially when I got to the New Testament. And then I run to the library and I looked up Jesus Christ and I thought, he really lived. History is dated from his birth. This is a real, no one contested that he really lived. And then when I read the sayings of Jesus, I had this epiphany because I was so ignorant. I had no idea that it was Jesus that said, turn the other cheek, cast the first stone, go the second mile. All these sayings I'd been hearing all my life, I didn't know they were in the Bible. Handwriting on the wall, skin of your teeth. And I said, wow, the wisdom of the ages, all these quotes, they're coming from the Bible. And so I finally thought, either Jesus was a liar, or he was insane, or he was telling the truth. And, I went through a real struggle, and I kept reading, and I felt this overwhelming sense. I mean, I'm a hermit up in these mountains, and when you live by yourself, you hear spiritually a little better. I had no radio, no TV, no cell phone. I'd go days without seeing another human. And you just hear that still small voice. And God was telling me I'm really there. And I thought, I've tried everything else. I've gone through all these different religions. I basically discarded Christianity without ever trying it because of my prejudice. And I thought, all right, I got on my knees up in the cave and I said, Lord, if Jesus really...
You knelt in the cave?
Yeah. I read in the Bible where it says they knelt and prayed. So I thought, well, I'm going to kneel and pray. I want to do this as well as I can. And I'm sure my prayer sounded very convoluted because I really had no training. But I just prayed from my heart. And I said, Lord, if you're really there, then I need to know that. If Jesus is really the Messiah, I need to know that. And my life is a mess. I mean, I was a big zero. I'm running around up in the mountains naked. I'm eating out of a dumpster. I have no education. I'm stealing. And I mean, I was religious, but I had no morals. I'm cursing, living immorally. And I said, Lord, give me some purpose for living. And I pray you'd forgive me and accept me. I've been a real sinner. And Don, this peace came into my